Ever picture yourself, miles out at sea, on a fishing boat, sun on your face, salt spray, the whole bit. But instead of worrying about baiting a hook, you're the one making sure the catch is sustainable, that everyone's playing by the rules.
That's the life of a fisheries observer.
It is, and it's a career our listeners have been curious about. So today, we're diving deep into what this role really entails, going beyond those, idyllic ocean views we often imagine.
It's definitely a career that often gets, well, misunderstood. Because when you hear observer, you might picture someone, I don't know, just passively watching, right? But these folks, the data they collect, it doesn't just sit in a notebook. It has a real impact on how we manage our oceans.
Right. They're on the front lines of keeping things in balance. And RoleCatcher, the resource we're diving into, mentions tasks like actually observing the fishing, recording all that data, and then, like you said, making sure regulations are being followed. So it's not passive at all. What are your initial thoughts on those core duties?
Well, on the surface, yeah, they might sound kind of straightforward. Observe, record, report, right? But let me give you an example. Imagine a fisheries observer out on a tuna fishing vessel. They're meticulously logging the size of the catch, the species, all of it. Now, that information doesn't just stay on that boat. It goes out into the world. It might even, influence international agreements on fishing quotas to prevent something like overfishing of tuna.
Wow. So you're not just clocking in and clocking out. You're potentially impacting, global conservation efforts. You really are a guardian of these creatures. And speaking of the realities of the job, one thing that drew me in was that office with a view thing we always hear about. But RoleCatcher doesn't sugarcoat it. They talk about the physically demanding work, harsh weather, long, unpredictable hours. It's a good reality check for anyone thinking it's just a peaceful cruise. What are your thoughts on those less glamorous parts of the job?
Yeah, it's definitely not all sunsets and dolphins. Physically demanding takes on a whole new meaning when you're on a rocking boat in rough seas. And we can't forget about the mental resilience you need to handle the isolation. Being away from friends and family, land in general, for that long, it takes a toll.
It really makes you wonder, what kind of person thrives in that setting? And here's something I found interesting. RoleCatcher doesn't really get into specific specializations within being a fisheries observer, though they do mention related careers like being a deckhand or even the captain. So does that make you think those are the paths people usually specialize in? Or is it more about having a really diverse skill set from the get-go?
I think it points to the need for a pretty broad range of skills, honestly. It's not just about loving marine biology. Imagine, being out there and something breaks down, knowing how a boat works, understanding the fishing gear, maybe even being able to help with repairs at sea. Those become essential. And as you move up, there's data analysis, report writing, even understanding policy.
So you're not just a scientist, you're kind of like an engineer, a writer, a bit of a diplomat, all in one. And speaking of moving up, RoleCatcher, they lay out 4 career stages: entry-level, junior, senior, and then principal observer. It seems like you start with basic data collection, but there's potential to lead teams, influence policy, even go into research. What I find fascinating is that as your responsibilities change, the skills needed change too.
It's true. It's not a static job at all. You can really grow with it. Take, for example, the junior fisheries observer.
Yeah.
They're doing those observations, that vital data collection, but they're also the ones making sure the fishing crews are following the rules, which requires some diplomacy.
And I'd imagine the challenges at that junior level are pretty unique. What do you think makes someone thrive as a junior observer instead of, feeling overwhelmed or in over their heads?
It's a tough one. You need to be meticulous, for sure, but also able to rely on yourself out there. And you got to be able to connect with people, even when things get a bit, tense.
You said it. Finding that balance between enforcing the rules and building trust with the crew, that's a skill in itself. Definitely not something you learn in the lecture hall.
Not at all. And it makes those questions RoleCatcher brings up in their FAQ even more interesting. They talk about dealing with illegal fishing, having to navigate different cultures. Those aren't just hypotheticals. They're realities for someone in this job. Absolutely. It's a whole other layer of complexity, right? Because you're not just dealing with numbers on a page, you're dealing with people, with cultural differences, with ethical dilemmas even. It's a lot to handle.
It really is. And it makes you appreciate those psychological demands. RoleCatcher mentions even more the isolation we talked about, plus those potential conflicts. That takes serious mental strength. And we can't forget about safety, especially in those dicey situations.
Right. You're not always just observing. Sometimes you're in the thick of it.
Exactly. This job is like detective, diplomat, scientist, all rolled into one. Speaking of the science part, I'm curious about the technology side. I mean, everything's high-tech these days. Has that changed things for fisheries observers?
Totally. It's not just notebooks and binoculars anymore. We've got satellites, real-time data, the works. Just imagine. You're a fisheries observer, you're on a boat with GPS tracking, and you've got this live feed of fishing activity, maybe even satellite images to monitor what's happening. It's a whole new world.
Wow, a bird's eye view of the ocean. Sounds like you'd constantly be learning new tech.
For sure. And it's not just using the tech, it's about understanding the data, what it means in the bigger picture, and then using it to make decisions, whether it's about fishing quotas or spotting new trends in the fish populations. It's constantly evolving.
Just like we were saying about the skills you need. It's a career where you never stop learning. And as you move up the ranks, those skills become even more important. Speaking of which, let's get back to those career stages RoleCatcher outlined. Remember, entry-level, junior, senior, and principal. It's fascinating to see how a fisheries observer's career could progress, starting with those entry-level jobs and potentially reaching the top.
Yeah, you could start off fresh out of school, eager to make a difference, learning the ropes. But with hard work and experience, you could end up leading a team, maybe even shaping policies, mentoring new observers. The possibilities are there.
That's a career path for you. And at that senior level, we're not talking about someone who's just recording data anymore. This is someone with years under their belt, a deep understanding of the field. They're not just managing people, they're contributing to policy. They're having a real impact.
They are. Imagine being that senior fisheries observer. You've seen it all, you've got the experience, maybe even a PhD. The data you've collected has shaped actual policies. And now you're passing on your knowledge to the next generation. It's incredible how much influence you can have in this career, helping to shape the future of our oceans.
It's a career built on passion, but also on making a real difference, starting with that love for the ocean, wanting to protect it, and then through dedication becoming a leading voice for sustainable fishing. It's impressive.
It is. And this brings up something important, something that often gets overlooked, but that RoleCatcher doesn't shy away from the mental and emotional demands of this job. We need to talk about that.
Yeah, we've touched on the physical challenges, the technical skills, dealing with different cultures. But what about the mental strength you need, not just to handle it, but to thrive in this unique environment? That's important.
It is. Just think about it. Weeks, months at sea, often you're the only one on that entire vessel who's thinking about conservation. Everyone else is focused on the catch. It takes a special kind of person to not only handle that, but to thrive in it. You need a strong sense of self, you got to be okay with being alone, and you need ways to deal with stress that don't involve arguing about fishing quotas with the cook.
I can only imagine. It's about more than just a love for the ocean, right? It's about being comfortable with yourself, knowing how to manage your own headspace, staying focused even when everyone around you has different priorities. That's tough.
Right. And then there's the potential for conflict, like those situations where you have to stand up to illegal fishing. That takes courage, knowing what you believe in and sticking to it, even when it's hard.
It's a side of the job that requires diplomacy, yeah, but also being assertive, having strong morals. It makes you realize what it takes to not just survive, but really thrive in that kind of environment.
It does. And it says a lot about the people who choose this career, their dedication, their passion. They're not just observing, they're protecting our oceans. One data point, one interaction, one difficult situation at a time. It's amazing.
Their commitment is definitely something to admire.
Yeah.
It almost makes those downsides we talked about, long hours, tough conditions, seem insignificant compared to the impact they're making.
Perspective is everything, right? The job's not easy, but the rewards, both for them and for the planet, those are huge.
Absolutely. Speaking of rewards, what would you say are some of the most fulfilling parts of being a fisheries observer? What makes those long days, the isolation, the potential conflicts, all worth it?
That's a great question. I think for a lot of these folks, it comes down to knowing they're part of something bigger. They're right there on the front lines of ocean conservation, collecting the data that shapes policy, helps manage those fish populations, and ultimately ensures that our oceans are healthy for years to come.
It's like being a guardian of the sea, not just watching, but actively protecting it.
Exactly. And beyond the big picture, there's the work itself. Every day is different. You're learning new things, facing new challenges. You're meeting all kinds of people, from fishermen to scientists. And of course, you're surrounded by the ocean's beauty, seeing marine life up close. It's pretty amazing.
It sounds like you need a certain kind of spirit for this job, doesn't it? Someone who enjoys a challenge, craves adventure, who finds peace in the rhythm of the sea.
Definitely. It's a demanding path, but it offers this incredible mix of science, adventure, and knowing you're making a real difference. It's special.
It is a special career, one that deserves way more recognition, more understanding. What started as a peek into a unique job has turned into this, exploration of what it really means to be a caretaker of our planet.
It has. We've covered the ins and outs of the job, the skills you need, the challenges, the rewards, and we've seen the impact these individuals have on the health of our oceans. But there's one question we haven't answered yet, something I think our listeners should consider as we wrap up this deep dive. What does it take to truly thrive as a fisheries observer? What blend of skills, personality traits, and inner strength would make someone not just survive, but truly flourish in this demanding yet incredibly rewarding career?
And that's a question we're thinking about. We've talked about technical expertise, physical and mental toughness, the importance of cultural sensitivity. But what about those inner qualities that set someone apart? What do you think? It really is something to think about. We've covered the technical skills, the physical demands, the importance of navigating different cultures. But what about those inner qualities, the things you can't really teach, that would make someone not just survive, but really thrive as a fisheries observer? What comes to mind?
It's a great question because it goes way beyond just checking boxes on a resume, you know? Imagine the mental strength that takes to be out at sea for weeks, months at a time. And often you're the only one on that entire boat who's thinking about conservation, about the big picture. Everyone else is focused on the catch.
That takes a certain kind of person to handle, for sure.
It does. You need to be comfortable in your own skin, okay with solitude. You got to find ways to deal with stress that don't involve, debating fishing quotas with the ship's cook.
It's finding healthy coping mechanisms out there.
Exactly. And then on top of that, there's the potential for conflict, like those times when you might have to stand up to illegal fishing. That takes guts.
No kidding. It's not a job for someone who's afraid to speak up.
It's not. And it highlights something else that I think is crucial in this line of work. Adaptability.
Right.
Because the environment is constantly changing, literally. You've got the weather, different personalities, unexpected problems popping up. Being able to roll with those punches to adjust, that's essential.
So being resourceful, being able to think on your feet, not being afraid of a challenge.
Exactly. And you know what else I think goes a long way in this job? A sense of humor.
Mm.
Not at all. Being able to find the lighter side of things, laugh at the absurdity of it all, not take yourself too seriously. Those are such important coping mechanisms when you're dealing with rough conditions and sometimes even, tense situations.
A little laughter can go a long way out at sea.
Yeah,
Keeps the spirits up.
absolutely. So I think to answer your question, a truly successful fisheries observer is someone with that mix of technical know-how, physical and mental stamina, a strong moral compass, and of course, a good dose of adaptability and humor never hurts. They're scientists, diplomats, adventurers, all rolled into one. It's pretty remarkable.
It really is. Maybe they don't always have the most conventional career, but their dedication to protecting our oceans, that's something special.
I couldn't agree more. They're the unsung heroes of ocean conservation. Their work deserves a lot more recognition, a lot more appreciation.
Well said. And I think that's a perfect note to wrap up this deep dive on. We started with a look at this unique career path, but it's become so much more than that. It's about what it means to truly care for our planet. We've explored the skills involved, the challenges, the rewards. We've seen the impact these individuals have on keeping our oceans healthy. And I think we've gained a deeper appreciation for the dedication, the resilience, the sheer commitment to conservation that defines this amazing profession. So as we close this episode, we encourage you, our listeners, to take these insights with you. Think about the vital role fisheries observers play in safeguarding our oceans. Remember their dedication to sustainability, their courage when things get tough, and their unwavering commitment to protecting one of our planet's most precious resources. Who knows, maybe this deep dive has sparked something in you. Maybe it's a newfound appreciation for the people working behind the scenes to make our world a healthier place.